Hello and welcome to a look at Trailblazer for the Commodore 64, a game that was made by Mr. Chip Software, who of course later became known as Magnetic Fields and was responsible for quite a few classics, specifically on the Amiga. The game was originally made for the Commodore 16 or C16 if you want, and was converted to the Commodore 64 by Sean Sutton himself. The game is about you being in control of a ball who has to navigate several different tracks. And in order to navigate the different tracks, you'll have to deal with squares of various different colors, and I will quickly go over what they do. The instructions will do that, but brown squares are neutral squares, they don't do anything specifically. Green squares will give you a speed burst, blue squares will bounce you, red squares will slow you down and prevent you from jumping. That is something that is very, very important. Purple squares will knock you back, and cyan squares will invert your controls, as long as you are on the actual cyan square. It is very, very important and can become quite a bit of a pain on certain stages. Black squares are holes, you probably don't want to go into them. By the way, just showcasing the bonus game, I will be cutting it out for the rest of the video. I screwed it up, but whatever. No harm done. You also have some white squares, which are warp squares, and they will send your ball into a speed that is quite excessive. And if you manage to get into the goal zone with the warp still active, you will get your bonus points multiplied even by 10. And of course, you will get quite a bit of time in the process. The warp squares are only active in arcade mode. You have several different ways you can play this game. You can play one-player arcade, two-player arcade, one-player trial, two-player trial, and one player against the computer. I'm pretty sure you can play a match as well. Yeah. And the warp squares in other game modes are just equivalent to a blue square, so it will balance you. In the main menu, you can select 3 tracks you can race in a match or do a trial, and if you do a trial, you will do the first of the 3 selected tracks. In other game modes, except for arcade, you have unlimited jumps, but in arcade mode, you only have 7, and you can carry over 2 between stages, so a total of 9 potential jumps available. So even though you can trial the different stages, it is a bit deceptive because you have to pace yourself so you can get through the different tracks without using more than 9 jumps at the most. So even though you can set some very, very fast times in trial mode, it doesn't mean that you can actually copy those times when playing arcade mode. If we go through the interface quickly, top left, the player number, always nice to know. Next to that, the score. Next to that, the level we're on. Next to that, the time we have available. And the J signifies the amount of jumps we have available for this stage. It will be set to 7 plus any you carry over, as I was saying before, a maximum of 2. By the way, I was mentioning if you get to the goal zone with a warp active, this stage is basically a free warp to goal zone. You jump onto the warp square and then alternate right and left between the 2 lanes, and you should be going through quite safely. Underneath all these numbers and whatnot are the name of the different tracks, and they are hints as to what you are facing. Underneath that, by coincidence, if you haven't noticed it so far, is the game field. And of course, this game is in split screen mode because it's meant as a 2-player game. Now, the general concept of Trailblazer is incredibly simple. You are rolling a ball across a track with different squares doing different things. But beneath the simplicity hides a game that is very, very easy to play and hard to master. Because even though getting through the different stages by itself even is nice enough and rewarding, trying to perfect the different tracks or stages, whatever you call them, is actually quite a challenge because some of them are incredibly difficult. Some of them are definitely meant to eat as much time as possible in case you go into a black square. For reference, the time you lose from dropping into a black square is actually 3 seconds. And it may not sound like much, but if you do that a handful of times, then suddenly that's 15 seconds. And if you're already on a strict timer, uh, it is rather painful. So obviously, the ideal um, way to play is to avoid going into the holes, which is highly unlikely that you'll be able to get through all the tracks without plunging into a hole from time to time. Certain tracks are designed in such a way that you will lose time. If we look at the graphics of this game, they're nothing overly spectacular, I suppose. I mean, it is at a foundation level even rather simple, but it is effectively simple. It does what it needs to do, and it does it very, very well for what it needs to do. Well, yeah, it made sense. Trust me. The speed it moves at is actually surprisingly high. I'm not trying to knock anything or anyone or anything in any way, shape, or form, but it's just we've seen many a game on the Commodore 64 with a similar graphical simplicity, playing like absolute arse. I mean, I think everyone can testify to having seen games like that, but this game, smooth as silk, and in warp mode where you go absolutely bonkers if you're playing two players and you see the other player going into warp mode, this ball just vanishes. No slowdowns, no nothing. Everything runs as smooth as you could possibly want. You could argue it should be relatively simple, but just because something is supposed to be relatively simple doesn't mean that it is. Sound design, the title music is a bit basic but quite enjoyable, and the in-game sounds are informative but can be a bit grating, and that is why I have cut out the bonus timer sound even, because it does get a bit grating when you have to listen to that for 30 seconds in a row. Controls are spot on, but despite the simplicity of this game, it actually requires a lot of precision. The squares you need to be in at least half of a square for it to do what it is trying to do, meaning something like a green square. If you're trying to get a speed boost, you need to be at least half of the square. And when you're racing against the timer and you're trying to cut the different squares as tight as you can, that can actually be rather challenging to get the necessary effect of them. I was mentioning earlier that sine squares will invert your controls, or sideways controls at least, but only the sine squares themselves. The worst combination you can have is a combination of cyan and purple squares, the knockback squares, because when you touch the purple square, you go back to normal control, and then you get bounced into cyan, the cyan square, which inverts your control. So basically, you're trying to get away from the purple square, but instinctively you pull the way you're trying to get away, but because, of course, the silent square will invert your controls, you are moving in the opposite direction, finding it very, very easy to get trapped. That's not something to do with the controls, that's just something to do with the designer being a complete bastard. The level design is very, very enjoyable and varied, and certain stages are definitely more challenging than others, and some of them are deceptive because they could indicate that they are more challenging than they really are. This one, for instance, it's called totally random. There's nothing totally random about it. The only thing of note is that you only have brown and purple squares on it, and as such, you will need to make sure that you only jump when you absolutely need to in order to progress through the stage. I've always claimed that this game is one of my all-time favorites, and I'm saying it for good reason. I have completed this game several times. I've played this game hundreds of hours over the years, I think. My brother and I used to play this quite a lot. And there is something incredibly enjoyable about the simplicity of it. It can frustrate the hell out of you, trust me, if you are just trying to get past a certain stage and if something goes slightly wrong. You can easily find that when something starts going slightly wrong, something goes very wrong because your timing goes out the window. And that is where the easy to play and hard to master aspect comes in. And that is one thing I fully enjoy about this game. On the surface, it is relatively simple. I mean, it's not the greatest action game in the world, but it still requires a certain amount of skill to master. And ultimately, I suppose that's what you want from a game. A game that's enjoyable to play, can offer you enough challenge that will keep you interested in playing again, but also teaching you in the process how to get better at the game. Playing by yourself is not as bad as you might think. I mean, obviously, these kind of games are absolutely best enjoyed playing with someone else, and you can play against the computer, and it will do average things and perform averagely well. It doesn't cheat in any way, shape, or form. It's just sticks to its path and then sticks to one speed, and then tries to navigate the tracks as well as possible without necessarily leaving you in the dust. But of course, as I was saying, playing this with someone else is always more enjoyable. And likely one of the main reasons why I hold this game in such high regard is because I was playing it a lot in a time of my life where things were simple. They were good, but simple. And maybe somewhere I missed that time. I don't know. Irrelevant of what the reason might be doesn't detract from the fact that Trailblazer, for all its worth, is a super enjoyable game in every respect. It is likely not a game for everyone, but I have always felt that it is a showcase of gaming excellence, and that's my opinion. Game completed and a perfectly round number of 519,000 points. Not too bad. I think I've made my point clear. I think Trailblazer is an undeniable classic. And on that note, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time. Bye bye for now.